and product manufacturing. Please help me welcome Steffen, Oliver, Will, and Vince. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. Yeah, so we're going to talk today a little bit about when art collides with industrial product and luxury brands. Really interesting topic of conversation. Excited to be here tonight. Could not be in a better place here in Silicon Valley and bringing the art world here. And so I'm going to be their friendly moderator, Will Decker. I'm a Bay Area native, so I've lived through all the dot-com booms, done a lot of building and growing, software engineering and products. Now I'm at Plug&Play, which is probably the oldest and largest accelerator that is very much about open innovation and taking the new ideas and businesses of startups, getting them into the market and scaling faster. And I'm joined with an excellent group of panelists. And I think what I'd like to do to start is just kick it to each of you and maybe a quick introduction, your name, the organization you work for, and your role. How does that sound?
Very good. Okay, my name is Steffen Ganz. I'm a designer working in Austria for the studio FA Porsche. And I'm actually moving over to here, to California, to Los Angeles, Costa Mesa, and being the head of design for Porsche Design of America.
Fantastic.
Hi, I'm Olivier Pechou. I work with two French heritage brands, and we're in the Puiforcat, and with a crystal maker. Puiforcat is a silversmith, and I am based in New York and oversee the distribution and strategy for North and South America.
Hi, I'm Vince Voron, based here in San Francisco. I work for Dolby Labs, and I head up the brand design, experience, and art programs there.
Great. So we're going to start off and go through some questions that the panelists will discuss. As we get through that, maybe at the end, the last 10, 15 minutes, we'll open up to questions from the audience. The first one, maybe starting with some context. So what are some of the key brand and product development steps? Who's involved? What's sort of the ideal outcome? What does that look like for you? Who wants to take it first?
Well, a very important step for me being involved in product design and content design, I guess I've learned over the years that you need to establish some constraints to both protect yourself from yourself and your own subconscious aesthetic ideas, as well as to give the stakeholders and decision makers in your organization some guardrails as to how they're going to judge your creative work. So I think spending time up front to actually create that strategic framework is proven to be very important to my work in particular.
So first, maybe it's important to talk about the history of Porsche Design a little bit. Because Porsche Design was founded in 1972 by Mr. Ferdinand Alexander Porsche, who was the inventor of the famous Porsche 911. And he first started as chief designer in his father's car company. And then after the family decided to go public, everyone of the Porsche family members were without a job, so to say. So he decided to build up his own design studio, first in Stuttgart, Germany, and then he went back to Austria, where he grew up actually in the times of World War II. And so he first started with a design agency, working in different fields of projects. And now, since we are growing to a big brand of Porsche Design, we still are the think tank in Austria. It's just the designers who create new product ideas, the first concepts, and then moving over to the different company or fields and product managers who can, taking over.
Sure. Fantastic.
Yeah, in the design process, I think there's, of course, it's all the designers, and whether they're in-house or external partners that we work with. I think what is important for us is to stay true to the brands that we work with, but also always be relevant and try to innovate. When you work with brands that have been around for several hundred years, although there's a very strong heritage, you also have to be cognizant of the fact that if you want to be here in 100 years, you have to stay relevant and innovate all the time, otherwise you'll be gone.
Absolutely. And so that innovation, making a winning product, whether it's a startup building software or it's taking a a design that's been around since the 30s, what does that look like? What factors really contribute into a winning outcome for you? Is it, some guiding principles and trade-offs and having honesty within design? Is it function following form? What are some key factors for you as you think about a winning result?
Since you mentioned the 30s, I'll start with that.
He's the oldest.
I think it's a mix of all of that. I think it's, for us, especially with Puiforcat, because one of the fourth generation, Jean Puiforcat, was the founder of the Art Deco movement. And in the silver work, he got rid of all the decorative elements to make very simple and pure lines and make something where the form and function are essential. And so when we do something today, we try to stay true to that because it's really who we are, but also, innovate in new ways with products that are relevant to what people do and how people live today. And, sometimes you succeed, sometimes you have a product that you think is going to be amazing and doesn't meet its audience, and sometimes you have some amazing surprises as well.
So you find those ones that win, that fit sort of that need or the demand and experience?
It's a mix of things. I think you have to meet a need. Sometimes you surprise your client by creating something they don't expect, or they don't think, oh, why would I use this? And suddenly they discover it, experience it, and they love it. And it's important that you also push the boundaries and surprise people. Because if you always do what people already expect, then you're just in the past. So it's important to do something new and think of a way to surprise your client.
That's true. We experience the same that it's important that the quality is very good of the design of the concept. You need to be different to the others. If you do what the others are doing as well, it doesn't make a very nice and winning product. Of course, you need to be different. You need to have a totally new concept, an innovation. And for Porsche design, it means as well that it needs to be executed in a perfect way.
And does innovation play a role in that at all in terms of the design projects you're working on? Does that relate back to some of the materials or ways to execute against the types of projects you get?
Definitely. Innovation is very important. So when we were asked to design a leather jacket, for example, we are not just thinking about trends, or fashion that going on of new colors or cuts maybe. Our idea was there, for example, to create a very thin Gore-Tex technical fabric, which is glued together with a very thin calf leather, for example. So this is a functional aspect that is something that people expect from the band Porsche design, and not just fashion.
Fantastic. So thinking specifically about artists and musicians and their impact into your own teams, your own process, maybe describe a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think I'll take that one to start. Coming from Dolby, we've been in the entertainment industry and supporting the entertainment industry and artists for over 50 years. So we are continuously trying to inspire filmmakers and musicians to try and leverage our technologies to create spectacular experiences. But it wasn't until recently when we moved into our new headquarters on 9th and Market recently when we actually invested in art to inspire our employees, our visitors, and our customers that come to see us. And so we have a program called the Dolby Gallery, and we're on the corner of 9th and Market, and it's all glass. And we have a 60-foot by 4-foot digital display. And we made a conscious effort to actually design a gallery and not a lobby for our reception. And it was a big move for us. We're a small company. It was a huge investment just to put in that digital display. But the bigger investment, the commitment the company made is that we actually hired 2 curators that we have on our team today. And we decided that we would actually hire artists to create new media art, both digital and audio art. And that was a big deal for us. And so we did it the first year. And then by the second year, the executives started telling us, like, God, this is pretty expensive. And we're like, yeah, but we're inspiring artists. Yeah, but what's the bottom line and what's the return? And so we realized quickly that if we didn't find a return on investment and a way to transport that art new media into our businesses, that we wouldn't be able to continue to invest in the great art. And so what we do today, all the art that we create, we find a business way to make it relevant. And so a lot of the digital art we give to our television manufacturers, our cell phone providers, because we're an ingredient brand. And so they're thriving for content. And so it's been a really great model for us to do that.
That's fantastic. I mean, one of the commonalities, I think, that I hear you describing between the artists and taking the work and actually connecting it to some sort of business metric or result is very similar for the entrepreneurs here in the Valley as well. They're starting a new business, a totally new idea, and innovating. So how do you find that connection point to a need or a return? Is it actually a financial return? Is there something else that it's contributing to? Maybe it's just the act of change or creation that that's working on. I love that. Anything else to add on working with artists, musicians specifically? Or, yes?
Well, musician, not in our case, but artists, yes, obviously. A lot of creative people are inspired by other creatives and artists, and that's everybody feels from each other. We also have artist residency in our factory where we invite an artist and not a product designer to spend a month or 2 months and create something, a new art piece using our facilities. And that's something that's it's interesting in general, but it's also very inspiring for our craftsmen because they are exposed to new ways of thinking and people that are coming with an idea that is not what they're used to do. They say, oh, I would like to do this in this way. And, the first reaction from a craftsman who's been perfecting his art for 30 years is like, oh, that's not possible. And of course, after they're a little upset, they're maybe I should try it. And so sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but it does push the boundaries of what we're doing. It inspires the craftsmen to do things differently, and it's just exciting in general.
That's great. And maybe just a little bit more detail on the actual core product and the craftsmen. So at the core of the brands that you're representing are this community of craftsmen who are absolutely experts. Can you maybe speak a little bit more about how that works?
Yeah, so everything we do is done by hand. All the crystal is mouse-blown crystal, and then it's hand-cut, gold-painted. And so there's very little digital work that goes into it, almost none, I would say. There's no machinery, and for the server is the same. We all work by hand, and so there's relatively small facilities. The workshop for the server is 10 or 12 people. So, and it's one of the biggest in France at this point. So it's small.
Fascinating. Thank you. What are some examples of products or brands or designs that have gone wrong or not as expected? Maybe share a story and something you took away or learned from that.
Yeah, we have a story. Porsche Design wants to work together with a famous tool brand in Europe, which is called Metabo. And we were asked to design a special impact drilling machine. And in our opinion, we had found in a lot of workshops the perfect recipe and conceptuation of this drilling machine, which was featuring a top handle, which was a perfect gravity point, and it was very nicely made with an aluminum frame machined with carbon fiber caps to the side. So it was a very nice design and a special concept, different to all the other products. But somehow it was a disaster. No one was buying this machine because what we think is that it was a little bit too far of a stretch for the brand Porsche Design. So the people just didn't expect a tool from a luxury brand like Porsche Design. So it was a flawless product, but no one really was buying it.
Very interesting. So what was the takeaway with there is to stay more organic or authentic to sort of the core of what your design firm is about, or was there something else that you had learned from that experience?
Yeah, As we as designers sometimes think, okay, we are Porsche design, our core competence is design. So we work in very different fields and categories. So we thought we can do a good design for all the different products. But it's not just the product, it's the whole experience, the brand, the image that comes with it. And so if people think, okay, it's a good design, but I want a tool and I need the credibility of the brand.
Absolutely. Any other stories?
Yeah, a quick one. Probably an early failure at Dolby. I've been there for about 5 years, and we are just embarking on product design. We have a few products in the market in the enterprise business. We have a theater product. We now design cinemas, etc. But it's very new to us. And in our early days, when we were designing some concepts through, we realized that we failed to celebrate the key feature, and we failed to celebrate what Dolby was bringing to an existing industry and what magic they were bringing. And because we knew, the engineers in the company knew, that what we were building was far superior, we, I think, lacked perhaps the confidence or the foresight to actually exemplify that audio or visual experience with a physical product or some type of threshold moment is like, you're now entering the Dolby experience. And so now, at the core of our design language is that threshold moment and that celebration of one key feature. And it's tough when you're designing products to get a group of individuals to pick one feature and agree over a 2-year period that it's going to remain the key feature. And then when you look at the product, you might not see it, it might be abstract, but if someone explains it to you, you're like, I get it now. And so that was a learning and how we dealt with that.
I don't know a story of something that went wrong, but one of things that is very important when we develop a new product is that we take as much time as we need to make it. So we're lucky that we manufacture our own products, so we can try and experience and learn from that. And we'll never release anything that's not fully ready and functional. So we have the chance that we can take that time. We can take 2, 3, 4 years. It doesn't matter. We'll come up with a product that we're proud of, and that also fits the brand. That relates to what you were saying, is that the most successful products for us are products that, of course, respond, have a function, that are beautiful designs, but that also have a design that people recognize as being a Puiforcat design or a Saint-Louis design, and not a product that is someone else's design. And that's very important in everything we do.
Absolutely. Vince, so earlier you mentioned a little bit about your process in setting up an idea in the very beginning, having some guardrails. At what point and this is for anyone, but at what point do you involve the end consumer in your process? Is it through some advisory council? Are they very early on? Do you have to wait till a minimum threshold appears? When do they get involved?
Yeah, good question. Unfortunately, I think in the product design cycle, so much of what at least we're working on, there's the value of the intellectual property and the secrecy associated with us doesn't really permit us to go outside early. However, we realize that we have a lot of consumers within our own company. And so we made sure that we went outside of the design team to get feedback on our product, to wear the product, feel the product, observe the colors. We have a lot of men in our company. We're trying to change that, but we don't have a lot of women to give us commentary about what do you feel about this. And so just to make some checks. And so we make sure that we reach out into the deeper parts of the company, even asking people who work in the cafeteria. We do user studies, et cetera. But there's a lot of valuable insights that you can get within the own corporation. And then as we get closer to market, we work with influencers and then outside agencies to test and gather data. But for a large part, it's most internal data collection.
Same thing for us. We don't really involve our clients until the day we show the product to them. What we do is, of course, we have teams around the world. So if something is specific to a country, then we'll talk with the team in that country to say, what do you expect from that product? Or we work with experts. So there's a line of products with so many glasses. So if it's one glasses, you have one expert which is a designer, one expert which is a brand, but you need a sommelier to help you. So that's where we have an expert that helps us design the right product for the right function. But that's all the advice we get is from experts. We don't talk to the client till we are ready.
Fascinating.
Yeah, it depends on the product category. So we definitely do some user testings before proof of concept and everything. But I have to say that especially when you work together with some companies organizing these user testings, for example, for a washing machine. So they put together some people and you show them a new concept and you want to see if this is going to be accepted or which one of these designs is going to be the best for the market. And with the best one you go and design it, manufacture it and bring to market, and it should be a success because you tested it before. But I have the feeling that what is very important for companies, especially when you would be like cutting edge, bring something new that is not the customers, not the people who are telling you which is the best product, which you will have success with. So that means, for example, one short example is that we created this kitchen appliances set together with Siemens, which was internationally very famous back in the end of the 90s. And to tell the story, it was just second or third place in the pitch with different other designs. But the CEO that time of Siemens said, I really like this design featuring on the first home appliances kitchen set with aluminum extrusion pieces, very nicely made. But of course it was a bit more expensive. But in the end, he decided, no, even if it was second or third place, I want to have this kitchen appliance set. And it was a very big success. So what I'm telling is, as a company, you need to have courage, even if the customers and the testings and the analysis won't tell you which is the most successful product in the future.
Thank you. And I have to kind of ask as a follow-up, just from being out here, I'm sure you know that a lot of software startups, technology, especially you can see online when you buy a new product, it's very easy to get a new product out there quickly, and you can have killers that come, they didn't exist a month ago, and all of a sudden they're up at the top. Do you feel like there should be a shift in the way that you engage with the end customers, or some type of change in that model, or is it things are good as they are now?
I think where we come from, and because we want a product to be perfect, and that's what our clients expect, we can't launch in the short term because that wouldn't be perfect. And I think the whole manufacturing process, and it's different when you do something digital or if you manufacture a product, because designing, developing will take us years. We can't do it in 2 months.
Yep. Fair enough. So let's talk about then a product being, you mentioned a little earlier, Steffen, about it being more than just the design or the product and it being the experience. So what does it mean to be a consumer experience brand or product today?
Well, I think in the natural evolution of any product, I think typically a company in its infancy is naturally a product-focused company, because I think they have to develop the credibility, they have to market the product, get people to respect the product. But I think if the product and the company and the brand really achieve success, they'll be perceived as an experience brand and not a product brand. And you see many of the great companies around us here in the Valley, they don't even talk about how the product is used or what it does. They just talk about how guilty you'll be if you don't buy one of these for your family, whatever that might be, from a washing machine to a cell phone, et cetera. And so I think that's just very important, but it takes time. I think a lot of young companies, startup companies, jump too quickly into the experiential marketing or branding phase because they haven't really established the experience. They're maybe a part of the ecosystem, but I think oftentimes they fail to realize where their place is early on. But you talk about testing and experientials. I do think it is very important for companies, even if confidentiality is an important factor, is that they need to understand how people live, how people go to work these days, how they entertain, how they may use the product, and what are all the other products in their life, and how your product will interact with that environment.
Yeah, true. The generations are changing, so you have to know your customers. Now everyone is talking about the millennials, so what do they expect from the products? And we know that especially the millennials, they're spending money on experiences. They are not just expending money to have things or to own things. So that is a different, especially for the luxury brands. Maybe there could be a change. They are not so focusing on achieving a Rolex watch or whatever, or a Porsche design watch. So there is a change, but at the same time, you see a growth in the luxury market as well. But I think it's a good situation, and that they are willing to spend money on experiences, on eco-friendly products. They are much more like thinking about where they spend the money.
Fantastic. Yep, go ahead.
I mean, as you said, I see too many times brands or companies will jump to the experience without really trying to think about what they are offering and what is at the core of their business. And when we sell flatware, we sell tableware, I think in the end we sell an experience because you'll be using those products in your home. And what we see when we do an event, the most successful ones is when we invite people to enjoy a beautiful dinner with an incredible table, beautiful flatware, beautiful glasses, and people leave from that and they realize that eating and drinking with our products is a very different experience, and they actually really enjoy it. And millennials, today they want experiences, but they don't necessarily own their homes. They might not spend on flatware today, but in the long term, they will. And so that's the experience.
Awesome. So we're here in Silicon Valley, and a global epicenter for all things technology and innovation. Buzzwords like 3D printing, AI and machine learning, AR, VR. What are you most excited about? And are there certain cases where you're looking at using the technology and integrating it a little bit more into what you do?
So I'm definitely interested in all these stuff.
Yeah.
I think it's amazing what happens there, and a lot of things make life very easy. Some things for our business are more relevant and others not so much. 3D printing is absolutely necessary for us, for the product development. So for designers, we don't have always so much time to develop stuff. So of course we have time pressure. So for us, when we make a quick sketch and a quick 3D model, in 1 or 2 days you have the final product in your hands. You can judge if the pen or a bottle is good feeling in your hands, that it's really helpful. And we see as well a lot of 3D products which come to market. So it's not just for the product development, it's like the process, it comes to market as well for glasses, for example, or lamps. I was in Milan last year and I saw a lot of 3D printed lamps on furniture as well. And this year everything was gone. So I would say for the rapid prototyping is really helpful. But as a new technology, it's not just for using it for the sake of using 3D printing because it's a new technology. It doesn't make it a good design. So it depends on the purpose.
Yeah, I think for us, of course, we look at what's happening and we're interested in 3D printing more, not so much to create a product, to manufacture the product, but to create maybe the tools that will help us do that product. So, because for us it's essential that we still do everything by hand, and we love I was saying the perfect imperfection of something that's done by hand. So we probably will never manufacture a final product with 3D printing, but we might need the tools, and we might create those tools with a 3D printer. So that's more where we see it going in our case, but then again, in 10 years from now, who knows what else will be happening.
Yeah, I'll just touch on VR and AR briefly. We obviously love 3D printing as well. It's a very efficient tool. I think what's interesting about VR and AR, of course, we love it. Dolby has a place there with audio and imaging technologies and sort of recreating reality or immersing you in another place where you've never been. But I think because the industry is so new, it's really hard to identify how to make money in that space. And so it's really hard to make a big commitment to build products. And so how we're participating is we're being the Switzerland for the industry. And so we're trying to be inside of all of those experiences and all of those startups and going in and helping them organically. And in a lot of ways, we're not charging them. We're just going in and saying, hey, try our audio technologies, try our imaging technologies. And we're handing them over to them as partners. And then we hope as they get bigger, they'll want to buy our technology. And so it's a much more organic way to participate in the ecosystem early on.
Great. Now talking then more internally in your own teams, what does that composition look like? Is it all creatives? Do you have your innovators and do you have your industrial designers? Sort of what does that mix look like?
Yeah, for us it's the design studio itself, it's mostly industrial designers. And for others, we have user interface designers as well. We have a strong network when it comes to software development. And but within the industrial designers, we have different characters. We have the ones who can handle and manage the huge projects, but we still need, and which is very important, especially when it comes to kinematics and functionalities, we need the ones who really focus on working on paper models and trying to invent something new.
Yeah, I'll jump in. Excuse me, Olivier. My team is pretty diverse, but I think so we have traditional subject matter experts from videographers to audio engineers to brand designers, industrial designers, graphic designers, et cetera, which are focused on developing products and marketing. But given that this show is all about art, I do have to get 2 plugs for art curators. I hired my first art curator, 3 years ago, and we now have 2. One of my art curators now is managing our global design team, and she's managing industrial designers and graphic designers and videographers around the world in 3 different countries. And I think if any of you are art curators out there, it's an amazing skill, and I just encourage you to push yourself into technology industries or you might think you're not so talented. Because I think having that ability to program, manage, and curate art and have that good taste, it is such a transferable skill. So,
pretty straightforward teams with creative, product designers, product development. So pretty straightforward.
Are there any qualities that make an excellent designer? For example, is it you recognize their work wherever it is or something else?
So I think the answer changes from companies to company, and there's no right or wrong answer. In our case, and we've seen that when we do the more successful designs or not as successful, is it's very important for us when we hire a designer is to have a dialogue with the person, to make sure that the designer will understand what we do and how we do it, and we'll create a design that is not his design manufactured by someone, but it's a design for us. And yes, we will know who did it, and you will see why he did it this way because it's this designer, but it's a design that is a Puiforcat design or a Saint-Louis design, and that's the most important thing for us.
yeah, I think just on the personal design aesthetic, I think if for big brands, it's great to work with well-known artists or product designers, but many of those individuals who are on the outside of a big corporation have their personal style. And even people within a corporation have their own personal style. But I do believe that corporate brands need to identify their own style. And I think they need to assert that constraint upon their company. So it doesn't matter, which of the 50 designers designed it, that it's going to feel and look like the company. But you leverage that designer to help you make great products.
I just can speak for if you want to work for Porsche design, for example, you need to share this kind of philosophy, how to design stuff. And our design is focusing on creating products that are timeless, puristic, which are engineered products, so they feature some kind of new functionality, innovation. These are abilities or skills we are seeking for is designers who are really thinking and not just doing the designs by any emotions they have, for example.
Letting that drive them. Yep.
Yeah.
So when then you taking back to the product and the delivery of that product and growing it, really trying to grow and scale, go to market. Who do you partner with? Who kind of gets you organically? Are these partners outside your companies that are trusted, that you've worked with for a long time? Do you look for a more open type of a network? Do you look for certain common principles? But in those other partners, I guess, what makes a good partner or not?
Well, I think it's the same as a designer is someone that you can have that is relevant to what you're doing, of course. It's also someone that you can have a discussion with and that understands what you expect, and you also understand what the person comes from. So it's a two-way street where we both have to interact and understand each other. And I think it's one of the most important qualities in any partnership, really. So in my case, in the US, I try to partner in distribution, for example, with stores or with influencers that understand what we're trying to do, that understand the brand, and that enjoy it and see an interest for themselves as well to be part of that story.
Are you, just a quick follow-up on that, are you finding that in certain categories or in your category, you're trying to adapt or change any type of strategy?
I don't know if we would change it, but we'll find, depending on the part, because we're a French company, a lot of what we do is sort of out of a French mind, obviously. And I think it's important that when you get that product to the US, you try to find a way to present that product in a way that's relevant to the US market. So we would not necessarily change the product to make it American, because it's our identity, so we would not necessarily change it, but we could partner with someone that will present it or that would talk to a specific audience in a way that makes sense for the market.
That is interesting. We've speaking of French, so we've been in France and noticed in the startup technology ecosystem it's thriving. There's a lot of innovation happening in French. Now, 2 years ago, it seemed though a lot of it were domestic companies focused on the domestic market. But I was just there a few months ago, and there were a lot more international. It seemed a lot more of a global mindset, a lot broader, more open network. So very excited to hear more of that sort of change and seeing more in the U.S. and I guess a larger market.
I'm very happy to hear that for the startup world. I think, for many years, especially in France, people always thought that they were not, so tech savvy and they had to come to the US to make it happen. And I think recently this has changed and people are building things and creating things in France that are recognized for it. And that attracts a lot of people now.
So what's the importance of music to brands and the people who manage and curate them? Anything specific around that?
Yeah, well, I think you're getting close right out of time, so I will be brief. But music is obviously very important to us. But I think this goes back to how do you build your brands organically. So we have a new product called Dolby Atmos for music, and we're working with EDM, DJs in big clubs, and we're working with them as we develop it. Unlike some of the other secret product design work I talked about, we're working with some of the biggest DJs around the world, and we're helping them make their music better, and they're helping us making the product better. But I think just music in general, even from an inspiration perspective, we all love music. We want to be surrounded by music, and so it's really important to create environments where people are inspired. And I think music has a really big part of that.
Great. So then last question for the panel here is how human is your process? We've talked a little bit about the creators, but maybe some other elements. There's been a meteoric rise in design strategy and how people run their businesses, not just within design, but across all engineering, product, other areas, personas and journeys. So how human-centered is your company right now in your process?
Well, I'll go first because I think you know the answer to that question at this point. It's 100% human because we do everything by hand and we want to keep it this way. So it's very important for us to keep it human and to make sure that people who work with us also are happy working there, and when you're a craftsman, it takes you about 10 years to be an accomplished craftsman. We also want you to stay for the next 30 years. And it's important to maintain that, and a lot of times it's the generation after generation working in the same company, which is fascinating.
Yeah, for us, of course, user-centered design is very important. These, you mentioned it already, user journeys, all these kind of methods to create a picture of the customer is very important. We don't use it for every kind of product. So if we design a leather luggage set, for example, it's maybe not so important, but we were asked to design a vacuum cleaner for the Japanese market. And then it's very helpful to create these kind of scenarios, personas, to not only to create a good product, but as well to communicate with the customer, which is a Japanese person maybe, just to explain them the design concept, what we think the people in the future could need in that scenario, in that situation, in their environment. And this is very helpful to create a successful product.
Yeah, and just from us, just briefly, we do a lot of study of the human brain, and we have a lot of neuroscientists in our company. And it's not so much for creating a product that someone can use today, but it's more about creating a story or an immersive experience and understand what are those factors in your brain that trigger fear and happiness, and how can we leverage technology to recreate those experiences.
Great. So I hope we have time for a question or two from the audience. I see a hand in the back.
Okay. Well, first of all, thank you guys for coming out here and talking to us. I myself am I'm an industrial designer, but I'm really early on in my career. So I've only been working in industry for about 2 years. So I was wondering, what advice would you guys have for me as, or better yet, what are some things that you wish you knew when you were like at my stage of your career?
Who wants to take that?
Very good question. I think that what is very important is today as a designer, or when I was in your situation, I was doing my final year project at the Porsche Design Studio, and there was one of the co-founders. He was right before his retirement, and he saw what I have to be doing for my final year project, which was in 4 months. It was a full-scale design model. It was a book, a documentation of almost 200 pages, an animation of a Class A 3D surfaces movie, and so a lot of stuff, and he was just shocked what I have to do. So what you want to do in that final year project is, of course, show all your skills, everything you have learned so far, to get the entry card for your next job. So what my advice is, don't go too early into your first job. Try to do some internships. Try to first see what you really want to do, because there are so many different fields that you can work in as industrial designer. Not only product categories, as well as, especially here in the film industry, you can do like character design or advanced design, a lot of different stuff. So go into the companies as an intern, see what they are doing, see what you want to do as a designer.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I would just say, take your time to develop your craft in your discipline, and be respectful. But don't be so respectful that you don't veer into other categories where you may not have the education background. When I was at Coca-Cola, I worked with a lot of industrial designers that were great graphic designers, and they were afraid to do the graphic design because they felt it was disrespectful to the pure graphic designers we had on the team. And even though they were fabulous. And so at one point we had to sort of like strip titles and just like, you're all designers, and maybe you're going to do graphic design this day and industrial design the next. So know your strengths and don't be afraid to become a hybrid designer as well, if that's in your wheelhouse.
Any other questions? Maybe up front?
Hi. So, Stefan, you mentioned earlier, it was a question among, you guys did user testing and whatnot, and somehow the data on that really didn't determine the success and the sales of one of the products. Do you remember that? I don't know what it was exactly, what you guys produced.
Yeah.
Okay, so my question is, as a designer or you're building a product or any services, how much of the, how much do you consider this, the marketing, the test marketing into your design as you guys are developing? Do you totally dismiss it? What do you follow? Like, how do you know? Is it your gut intuition to be like, okay, I'm going to dismiss that data and produce this beautiful design, or I'm going to take this in consideration because we need to think of sales? At what point how does that process work for you guys? How do you make those decisions as a designer?
Yeah. The story was that, of course, these user testings are important, and you get a lot of insights that you can use. But my point is that you need to have a certain courage and to make the decision. It's so the users are not making the decision for you. You have to be brave in a certain way to go the way you believe is the best. So for designers, there's a story or a simple a quotation that if you would have asked 100 years ago the people what they need to have a better transportation, they would have asked for more horses, and they wouldn't have invented the car. So the decision needs to be taken by the designer, and the insights you gain in the researchers and user testings are very important, definitely. But what you make out of it, that's the designer's decision.
I think if data helps you to, or your leadership to ascertain risk involved is one thing. Where I've seen data collection used wrongly is where people use it as something to hide behind if the product fails. And so it really depends a lot on your leadership, on how they're going to leverage that data once the product goes in the market. Are they going to use that as the excuse, like, well, I tested it, well, it wasn't my fault? Or are they going to use it to help iterate and make the product better?
All right. Well, thank you guys. It was an amazing discussion, and let's give them a round of applause.